Hi students, welcome to the BYJU'S Hindu News Analysis for 13th of November 2018. So let's get started. So let's look into the first article. The first article that we'll be discussing for the day is about the fake news. So what is this fake news? This fake news, which is also called as hoax news, is nothing but misinterpretation or mispresentation or misinformation and sending of information which is not factual in data and that which has a propaganda. So the propaganda may be to create a internal fabric division, it may be a polarization, it may have an agenda of religious extremism, or it may also create a riot like scenario. And in order to initiate one such move, all the global private companies, let's take for example the Google, Facebook, Twitter, have been initiating a number of steps as well. And one such step that has been taken by Facebook as well as Twitter in this particular case is what is called as the Iffy quotient. So what is this Iffy quotient? So scientists have developed a web-based tool to monitor the prevalence of fake news on social media platforms that involves the Facebook as well as the Twitter. So this is developed by the researchers at the University of Michigan in US, and this has a tool which uses a platform health metric called as the Iffy quotient, which draws data from two external entities. One, you have what is called as the news chip, the other is called as the media bias or what is called as the fact checker. So how does it work? So we did discuss it as two tools, and one such tool is a newswhip. So what is this newswhip? It is basically nothing but a social media engagement tracking firm which collects URLs on hundreds and thousands of sites every day and gathers information on which those sites have engagements on Facebook as well as Twitter. So what this tool is basically going on to do is it has certain information that it collects from multiple websites. So you have the Facebook and the Twitter which is posted on that website. Let's take for example, there is a website that is called as the xyz.com. So on this xyz.com there is certain hostage of the Facebook or Twitter. So it means there is active engagement of Facebook and Twitter on this website. So what this news chip does is it checks this URL, that is the xyz.com, and sees if there is any factual error in the presentation of facts. And then we also need to understand this Iffy quotient queries newswhip for top 500 most URLs. So what does it look into? It looks into the soft served URLs. Let's take for example, we have the xyz.com, we have the zbiz.com, or so on. So whichever is the number of website which has maximum number of people visiting the website, it will have a constant watch of that URL. And then what it will do is then the tool checks to see if these domain names have been flagged by media bias or flag check. So there is another tool which is called as the media bias or the fact check. So this is an independent site that classifies various sources based on their reliability as well as bias. So what does this tool further go on to say? So along with this tool, that is the media bias, what this Iffy quotient goes on to do is it categorizes those websites in case they are producing genuine facts or they are giving fake information, and then it has categorized these according to certain code and functions. So what are these? First, it calls itself as Iffy, and Iffy means if the site is on the questionable sources or conspiracy list. In case number of people have flagged this website as not having genuine content, not having right facts, or it does manipulating certain content to push across a certain agenda, it will be called as Iffy. And then you also have what is called as OK if the site is on any other list such as left bias, right bias, or a satire. So this is considered as a OK one, so people would be able to endorse them as well. So this will not have any vilifying content or something will ignite the passions of the people, but it will have its certain biases towards the left ideology or the right ideology or something as a taunt in terms of the satire. But then we also have another one which is called as an unknown if not on any of this list. So what the FB as well as Twitter are doing this, it is prioritizing certain codes, and these codes will be able to addresses whether this particular website or this particular news is a fake news or not. So this is one of the important tools that have been initiated. So what is the present context is? The present context goes on to speak the Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey was here in IIT Delhi. So what he goes on to say is that this fake news is a multi approach. So you cannot actually come up with one rigid approach. Why? Because fake news does not have to believe in one single agenda. So you cannot always keep measuring fake news. But the minute you see there is a fake news, large number of people have signposted it, they have red flagged it, then what Twitter immediately does is this misinformation or this manipulation of information can be immediately restricted. So if number of people are flagging it, what Twitter has said is we will be removing that content from the Twitter hold. And at the same time, what it further goes on to say is you cannot have a rigid approach, you need a flexible approach. And even if you are coming up new set of tools, new set of ideas, new set of artificial tools and mechanisms, still sometimes what you see is fake news cannot be completely ignored. And what he further goes on to say is this will require responsible reporting. So people will have to ideally understand that fake news is one thing where people will also have to take responsibility. They'll have to fact check. Only after fact checking it, only if it is genuine, only then they should be forwarding it. And at the same time, it is in the same event there was one of the other programs that was initiated, and that is called as the Power of 18. Kindly remember, this can be one of the important and prospective questions in your prelim examination. So what is this Power 18? So this is one of the initiatives of the Twitter, and this is aimed of getting the youth to vote in the next general elections. So this platform aims to engage more young people in India to contribute to public debate and work with like-minded partners that share the same objective of encouraging civic engagement among the youth. So what this platform provides is all those people who are wanting to channelize their energy towards civil engagement, where people come up and ask more people to join in this particular group so that more number of people vote up in the following elections. But kindly remember, this Power 18 is an initiative of Twitter, so this can be a prospective question in your prelims examination. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says deny MSP to stubble burners, says the NGT. So what is this article? We have discussed n number of times in the previous sessions as well that stubble burning is one of the cause of concern for the pollution aspect. So what this article basically goes on to say is all the chief secretaries of different states like the Delhi, the Haryana, the Punjab as well as the Uttar Pradesh have been called in by the NGT, and they have been asked to do certain important structural changes. So what are these structural changes they have been advised? One such structural change they have been asked to advise is come up with certain incentives as well as the disincentives. So what do we mean by it? Let's take for example, you have farmers. So all these farmers, in case they are listening to the government, in case they are listening to the authorities and they are not burning the stubble, give them incentives, provide them more money and give them more cash like subsidies and so on. So in this case, what farmers will be entertained to do is they'll be more encouraged to do important things like avoiding of stubble burning. But at the same time, what you also need to do is you need to come up with certain disincentives. Let's take for example, if there is a farmer who is going about stubble burning, then you will have to disincentivize him. Do not provide him the subsidy, do not provide him the money, and what you can also do is penalize him. So in such case, what you can take as an important step is stop giving him the MSPs. That is the most important for the farmer to sustain his livelihood. So in case you are able to penalize them in an indirect way as an initial step, what you are doing is you are adding this as one of the important steps to make sure that stubble burning does not take place and people does not have to suffer in the name of pollution. So these are some of the steps that have been taken, but we have previously discussed all the important moves in terms of the stubble burning, but this is one such step that has been initiated by the NGT. We will have to wait and watch if this will be implemented and this will be a successful one. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article is important from the GS paper 1 from the history perspective, and what is that we are speaking about? It is nothing but the Temple Entry Proclamation. So what is this Temple Entry Proclamation? So this was issued by Maharaja Chitra Tirunal Balarama Varma in the year 1936, and currently now we are in 2018, so we are celebrating the 82nd anniversary of Temple Entry Proclamation. And what was this about? This was about abolishing the ban on the so-called low caste people or Avarnas from entering the Hindu temples in the princely state of Travancore. So as a result of this particular proclamation that was given by Raja back then in 1936, every year Kerala government celebrates this as a social reformation day. So what is important for us to understand is that we know that there is Varna system in the Hindu system. So this Varna system basically categorizes people into classes. So what are these classes? So you have the Brahmins, who are the educated class, then you have the Kshatriyas, who are the soldiers, then you have the Vaishyas, who are the trader class, and then you have the Shudras, who are so-called untouchables, which are represented lower in the Varna system. Unfortunately, due to political reasons, what this has initiated is that these people are seen as the lower rank people and were not given due respect. And because they were not given due respect, they did not have access to the temples, they did not have access to the drinking water, and because of all the disrespect that these people went through, there was one of the movement that was initiated, and one such movement that was initiated was the Vaikam Satyagraha. So what was this Vaikam Satyagraha? So this was this Satyagraha that happened in the 1924s and the 25s in the Travancore against untouchability in the Hindu society. So what happens is you have a Shiva temple which is in Vayakam in the present region of Kottayam. So what happens is, because these people were not able to access the temple, they were not having the freedom to enter the road in that particular temple, they faced a lot of ignominy as well as disrespect. So in order to overcome this problem, the Satyagraha which was conducted in 1924s and 25 basically aimed at securing certain amount of freedom to all sections of the society, irrespective of the class that was being done. So though this was a political setup, what we need to understand is this was a movement which made sure that the entire society is seen as one, where there is annihilation of the caste. But what is also of importance to us is that these are the set of people who have faced a large scale disrespect, a large scale differentiation, a large scale discrimination, and this discrimination had to be warded off, and that is why the king raised up this particular proclamation called as the Temple Entry Proclamation, so that all these so-called untouchables would be able to access the temple and would be able to pay their respects to the god that they revere. This is what we need to understand in reference to this article. So moving on, let's look into the next article. So the next article says, report sees climate risk from rise in Indian AC units. So this article is more important from the prelims as well as the mains perspective, and let's see what this facts that are being voiced says about this article. So there was one of the important summits, and that is the Global Cooling Innovation Summit. So what is this summit? The summit is a first of its kind solution focused event that will bring together leaders from around the world to explore concrete means and pathways to address the climate threat that comes from the growing demand of the room air conditioners. So what is this article all about? So what happens is you have the climate change which is interfering with the human as well as the animalhood. So because of the climate change, there is increase in the temperature, and because there is increase in the temperature, there is suffocation that you see in the apartments, the houses as well as the office premises. And because of all this, what you see is the growing need for the air conditioners. So because of these air conditioners, this is adding to the climate change is what this article all about. So in order to address the menace of this air conditioners, this Global Cooling Innovation Summit is being handled. So this event is jointly organized by the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, along with the Rocky Mountain Institute Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economy, as well as the Conservation X Labs as well as the CEPT University. So let's understand some of the statistical data in order to prove the point. So it says currently there are about 1.2 billion room air conditioning units in service around the world. It is estimated the number of units will increase to up to 4.5 billion by 2050. India alone will have 1 billion air conditioning deployed in the market by 2050. So according to a report by this 2022, India is expected to have a fourth of the world world's air conditioning units, and the risks to climate from this could be immense. So because of all these air conditioning, because of these volatile gases that have been let, these greenhouse gases could be a threat to the humans. So in order to address this, that is why the Global Cooling Innovation Summit has been taken into picture. So one such important initiative that has been taken by this Global Cooling Innovation Summit is the Global Cooling Prize. So what is this Global Cooling Prize? It is a mission innovation challenge that aims to spur the development of a residential cooling solution that are at least 5 times less climate impact than today's standard. Let's take for example, according to today's standards, the average greenhouse gases that are emitted by these air conditioners are about 1 ton. So if we are able to reduce it to 0.2 ton, that would be the agenda of this Global Cooling Prize. So what it further goes on to say is, Global Cooling Prize is a competition with global reach and participation to achieve dramatic breakthroughs in cooling technologies. So this will be a platform where all the entrepreneurs, innovators, engineers, scientists would be able to gather up on this platform. They'll be able to give innovative measures as to how they can come up with new steps, new ideas, new technologies, so that they are able to innovate a new technology so that air conditioners can minimize the output of the greenhouse gases. It further goes on to say, the objective of this competition would be to develop a cooling technology that requires radically less energy to operate, utilizes refrigerants with no ozone depletion potential, with low global warming potential, and has the potential to be cost effective at a very large scale. And what this summit is basically doing is reducing the greenhouse emission gases that have been emitted by the AC units. So this is all we have to understand in reference to this article. So moving on, let's look into some of the prelims practice questions. So the first question says, Samudra Shakti is a naval exercise between India, and the answer for this is Indonesia. So this is a very factual information, so we will not need much of explanation for this. The Wakhan corridor is the region connecting narrow strip in the northeastern Afghanistan. So this is a map based question, so let's look into the map. So this is near the Afghanistan region in the northern borders. So this is what is the Wakhan corridor. And the next question is, Netiquette is a program which is introduced by the following country. Which is the country? It is Saudi Arabia. So what is this Netiquette? So this Netiquette is nothing but a Saudization program introduced by the Saudi Ministry of Labor. So this program classifies the country's private firms into 4 categories: premium, green, yellow, and red. Premium and green categories include the companies with high Saudization rates, while yellow and red includes the one with low rates. So what they basically want to do is, they want all the companies in Saudi Arabia to employ more number of Saudi nationals. So they have categorized into 4 forms. So in case a company is poised in premium and green, it means there are suitable number of Saudi nationals. But if it has less number of Saudi nationals, it means they'll be put and categorized as yellow and red. After being categorized into this zone, they'll have to make suitable structural changes, and they'll have to employ more number of Saudi nationals into their company. So in 2013, the government in Saudi decided to give more preference to locals in jobs. For this purpose, it made employment 10% local mandatory in all forms. So the Netiquette law makes it mandatory for local companies to hire 1 Saudi national for every 10 migrant workers. So this is what we need to understand in reference to the Netiquette. So moving on, let's look into some of the mains practice questions. So it says, RCEP represents a decisive platform to India which could influence its strategic and economic status in the Asia Pacific region and bring to fruition its activist policy, but is also marred with due concerns. Explain. So as we have discussed previously, so the subject matter here is RCEP, so we will have to explain what RCEP is. So this is an international free trade agreement among 16 nations in the Asia Pacific region. It includes 10 member states of the ASEAN and also 6 Asia Pacific countries. Kindly remember these names. This can also be asked in your prelims examination as well. So what are the 6 countries? You have Australia, China, India, Japan, New Zealand, as well as the South Korea. So the next point it goes on to say is how is that it is helping India in the strategic and the economic status. So for which what we have to understand is it boosts goods trade by eliminating most tariff and non-tariff, which will reduce the taste cost for India, expected to provide the region consumer greatest choice of quality products at affordable rates. So once India opens up, what you have is the consumers will have more number of options. When you have more number of options, the competition would have increased, and when there is more competition, there will be dip in the prices, and then consumers would be able to bear the fruit of it. And next it says it also seeks to liberalize investment norms and do away with service trade restrictions. So we are able to reduce the number of trade restrictions that have been voiced previously in these set of agreements. It can address challenges emanating from implementation concerns, overlapping agreements, which is creating a situation obstructing effective utilization of these FTAs. It will seek to harmonize foreign investment, intellectual property rights, and several other law standards beyond what has been agreed by the developing countries at the WTO. India enjoys a competitive advantage in areas such as information and communication technology, IT-enabled services, professional services, healthcare, and educational services. So we know India is also called as the service hub of the world, and what India can do further is we know that there are also other countries, let's say for example the Vietnam, the Cambodia, and many other Southeast Asian countries which are kind of the manufacturing hubs. So what India would be able to do is it can go about servicification of the manufacturing sector. What do we mean by it? Let's take for example, in order to minimize the complexity of all these manufacturing entities, it needs certain software programs, it needs certain implementational bits. So what India would be able to provide is it will be able to provide services to these manufacturing entities. How? By simplifying their programs, providing certain service tools. So India would be able to advance this as well, and at the same time what we are able to do is more businesses and more number of organizations and corporations would be able to have service packs with them, and then there will be more employment exchange program with these. So these are the number of advantages, and at the same time there are certain new concerns that have been voiced. So what are these concerns? The first is the greater access Chinese products will have to the Indian market, a problem given India's massive trade deficit. We already have a large scale trade deficit with China, so indirectly what this can also do is there can be something of Chinese products entering to India, so this will further increase the trade deficit. So the second concern is about the demands by the RCEP countries for lower custom duties on a number of products and greater access to the market than India has been willing to provide. So what are these? Currently, let's take for example, there is about 15 to 20% of the custom duties. So what these countries are expecting is further decrease in the custom duty. So let's say around 5 to 10% decrease. So this can be a problem to the domestic sector, and one such important industry in terms of agriculture would be the rubber industry in Kerala. So we have previously seen Thailand, which exports a lot of rubber, has been a problem to these agricultural products that have been manufactured in Kerala in terms of the rubber industry. So this can further make sure it enhances this problem. On the other hand, the more developed RCEP countries such as Australia and Singapore have been unwilling to accommodate India's demands to liberalize their services regime and allow freer mobility of Indian workers. So we did discuss India's strength is its service sector, but there are also countries like Australia and Singapore, they do not want to bring structural changes. They do not want movement of these service sector people moving into their countries, so they have certain stringent visa norms. These are not ready to free things, but at the same time they want Indians to actually cut down the custom duty. This is a point of concern, right? At the same time, Niti Aayog in one of its papers in the free trade agreements in general has said it is not paid off. What is not paid off? Exports to the free trade agreement countries have not outperformed exports to the rest of the world. So in case we do enter into free trade agreement, the exports through these free trade agreements to these countries is not more than that towards the rest of the other countries that we have the exports with. So what is the need of entering this agreement is what Niti Aayog had voiced in one of its concerns. But India cannot completely omit this, so what we need is a suitable conclusion. So what does the conclusion say? It says India, being a major player in this agreement, will have to bring reforms in the market to accommodate the request of the Asian countries. So instead of reducing the custom duties, let's say by a huge margin of 5 to 10%, it can reduce it to some extent and give more market to the outside countries. So what we are doing is we are accommodating the request of those countries, but at the same time those member countries, let's say for example Australia or Singapore, should be sensitive to the aspirations of India and provide due access in service sector and also be supportive of India's domestic commitments. So when we say India's domestic commitments, India is still a developing country, it has its own set of problems. So India has to keep its own set of problems in view and only then come up with law. But these countries cannot completely have an impulsive reaction that India is not doing enough. Why? Because India has its own set of its domestic commitments. It has to make sure that its international obligations at the same time domestic commitments are simultaneously met. So this is what we need to write for this particular answer. So kindly look into the BYJU'S CNA, pick up the questions, start writing answers on the comment section so that we can evaluate and give you the relevant feedback for the same. So this is it for today. Thank you so much. All the best.